I'll let him take it away. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you everybody for coming. I know we have lots of other interesting sessions happening at the moment, so really appreciate the attention. So let's make this fun. Well, first of all, I would really like to start by saying thank you to my co-conspirator, Daryl O'Donnell. He's now in Canada. He's the CTO of CU Ledger, who's actually, developing the solution. Unfortunately, he has to do work, a bunch of deployments, so he couldn't make it. And now, I have the honor to do the presentation. So thank you, Daryl. We miss you. Right. So what I'm going to do today is just to really sort of give you the motivation, because you might be wondering, okay, global payment networks, it's nothing new, right? It kind of exists. So why do you guys have to do it? I will also talk, and the reason why we do this is the community is very different. I'll talk about that. I'll also talk about the stack. And also, obviously, there's lots of choices how to do it. And we do it, I think, in a very unique way, which gives it a lot of flexibility. So I'll spend the time about that. I'll talk about how actually Corda helps us to do it in a very unique way as well. And then talk about the different things that we will move into further, right? Because we are in the beginning stages of the project. So essentially, let's talk about the problem and international money transfers. So members and credit unions, also known as financial cooperatives, they have members, right? Credit unions service the community. They are profit-minded but not profit-driven. And so the members, when they need to do their payments, and members can be physical people or can be companies, they actually, not really sure about which payment methods to use. And when it happens, actually don't have a lot of information about the payments. So it's a notorious problem, especially when you do international payments, right? You're not sure about conversion rates and so on and so forth, right? So that's a big issue. So credit union is actually a very unique community. They're small organizations, usually created by a set of community members for their specific financial needs. And they don't have access to all kinds of bell and whistles. Most of them actually don't have very sophisticated core banking systems or big contracts with payment providers. So it's very difficult to affect how the service is being provided for their members or have special conditions, right? So they have the special needs that are not really satisfied. And of course, we have more and more regulation. As you know, FAT rule and KYC AML rules are getting more and more stringent. And it's important for small organizations to actually being able to offer flexible service at the same time meeting regulatory requirements. So those are the important things that we have to meet and are not solved today, right? So the solution, of course, is to build a payment agnostic mechanism to help credit unions cooperate and exchange money across the border. And CU Ledger is a so-called CUSO, or Credit Union Services Organization. They're owned by credit unions, and they're building a solution. And I think the mission is really, really big. If you think about it, what they're really doing, they're building decentralized, distributed core banking system that's going to be shared by all these credit unions across the globe, right? So, which is, I think, a very, very exciting, exciting mission. And of course, one of the first applications there is payments, right? Because payments, sort of underlie everything that happens. So in terms of what we're looking for payments, integration, essentially, first thing that we want to do, we really want to improve user experience, right? So, no more very sophisticated sort of authorization, figuring out, IBANs and SWIFT codes and all that stuff, figuring out how much it costs. We really want to make it very simple, transparent, and a good environment, because we don't want people to migrate away from credit unions. That's the important thing. So now I talked about compliance. Obviously, while we improve that experience, we also want to improve experience for regulators and for credit unions themselves to make the process more transparent and cheaper, easy, and compliant with privacy regulations. So that's very, very important. We decided to leverage Corda Settler because it allows us to basically abstract different payment rails, right, and connect to different ways to send money and make the process really transparent. So how does it work? It's a fairly straightforward example. Let's say we have a couple different credit unions. So one is in the United States, the other was in the Baltics somewhere. They actually have a strong credit union community. So first, we want to, and we're doing dollars to euros, right? So we want to receive the confirmation. So once that's done, we want to share KYC details, between these two institutions. so that they are sure that they're dealing with the legitimate, transfer. So we need to capture that. As the next step, we actually want to offer services. There's going to be shared services at the network level to do AML check and other checks as might be required. So none of them have to do it individually. So that's the important thing. And as the next step, actually initiate the payment network transfer through the Corda settler. It reaches through whatever payment rail we're using to the corresponding party, and the transaction is completed, right? So and then we monitor how the transaction is happening, and as the transaction is happening, we give a lot of information to the initiating party and to the receiving party as well, so they know exactly what's going on. So that's what we want to achieve, right? So once it's finalized, everybody is notified, and it's done. I think it's a nice picture. We all wish we could have it. You kind of achieve it with different payment methods today, but not quite. So and it's easier said than done. So how do we want to actually go about implementing that? So essentially, what's going on here is we partnered up between different providers here. Obviously, Corda Enterprise and Corda Settler is very, very important component of what we do. We also work with Acuity. Acuity does AML Oracle on Corda Network, so you can do AML and get verifiable states about that AML check. And a very, very important part of that story, of course, Evernym and Sovereign. Sovereign being self-sovereign identity network. I'll talk about it in a second. And Evernym is one of the companies that provides, identity wallets and identity agents that help us to share, personal information that is required for KYC AML checks. And Luxoft is kind of architecting, helping to build it on top of Corda and connect all these technologies together, right, for CU ledgers. So that's what we do. So what's so unique and about our approach and self-sovereign identity? So I have to ask, how many of you actually familiar with DIDs and sovereign and okay, so some of you. So let me maybe talk a little bit about that. So there's two key things to understand, which is very important for this application. So self-sovereign identity, the idea of self-sovereign identity is that I, as a person or a company, I own a bunch of information, credentials about me. Not only my name, but also my qualifications, my relationship with the bank, my domestication address, and my driver's license, and all kinds of different things. As a company, my registration, my VAT number, and so on and so forth, right? So I own that information, and I can share that information to the relying party, people who need to verify that, in a peer-to-peer manner, such that they can verify whatever I'm sharing, giving to them is actually true, right? Does that remind you of anything? It exists today with paper, right? The problem with paper, of course, is that you need to collect the paper, you need to update the paper, you need to send paper to people, people need to look at the paper and verify it. It's cumbersome, right? And they need to read the paper, so it's difficult. So what self-sovereign identity and verifiable credentials technology does, it makes this process completely digital, right? So now, I as a company, as an individual, can collect all that important information and share it in a privacy-preserving manner such that people can verify it electronically and act upon it. So what it does, essentially, it gives us yet another sort of Oracle technology that is compatible with how we do the work today, right? Because not everybody is going to be a member of any sort of blockchain or DLT network, right? There's a bunch of other like post offices and government agencies and so on and so forth. They're just going to do the business like they do it, but it's very easy to extend it so that they can issue these digital credentials, which we can use, right, as part of the business process. And essentially, what happens here, we combine two technologies. We combine a shared ledger, which basically has public keys, right, like certificates, but it's a decentralized sort of certificate type of setup. And that's what we do there. We're not storing any identity information. We're storing public keys, which can be rotated. You have a history and everything else. You can actually revoke via zero knowledge proof these identities and credentials. And then we use Corda as a business protocol engine, right? So we kind of verify the agreements, we verify the stack, we check, okay, this happened, we have this information, yes, we verified it, good, we can move to the next step, right? So we can really combine the two technologies to orchestrate a big community, not requiring everybody to be part of one single network. So that's a very, very unique point which allows us to be flexible and move forward fast. So in terms of high-level goals, we kind of talked about it a little bit already, but just to reiterate, I think it's important that when we deal with personal information or company confidential information, it stays private, right? And only shared with external participants on required basis and only the things that they need to know. So now credit unions need to be in a position to easily authenticate and authorize their members to perform transactions without all this back and forth and questions like what was your last transaction that you probably don't remember never, or what was your cat's name 5 years ago or something like that. So we want to take that out. So and then of course credit unions, as I said, because they need to meet regulatory requirements, they need to be able to do it easily, and of course the goal is to be GDPR compliant. Because obviously, well, that's a big issue. We have to make sure that we respect people's right and not getting any problems with the law, right? So so essentially, that kind of gives you the picture here. So where of course we're using the sovereign technology to prove who the member is to the credit union, right? So then of course the Corda and Hyperledger Indy, which is the agent technology, allows us to exchange identities peer-to-peer and prove the credentials about the members, is used to onboard the states onto the Corda network. We use the settler to initiate and complete transactions, right? And the mirror process happens on the other end, of course, and the regulators can take a look at transactions on as needed basis via notary technology, via verifiable claims technology. We can generate claims out of transactions as well. So that's what we're trying to do. So before, how do we map it to actually Corda, and how does this work? So we need to go through a few processes essentially, and the first process is, how do you prove that you say who you are, right? So we need to do member identity check. And we basically going to use a very important technology that's already being deployed. That's what Darrell does today, deploying these things to a number of credit unions, called MyCUID. It's identity wallet. It's a mobile application which basically allows you to sort of log in when you talk on the phone or when you do mobile transactions or web transactions and prove who you are, right? It's very, very transparent. So it does not require online validation, so you don't need to be logged into the system. You just can actually call in and perform a certain transaction from the phone, which will prove who you are, right? And you can also confirm a request to do the payments, right? So we also want to actually, when we do the exchange between these two credit unions located in different countries, we want to make sure that all the parties provide the right information and also provide the consent to receive the money as well, which is the type of protocol we want to build on top of normal payments. And of course, in the end, if we do that, because we have this peer-to-peer log of different states, how things have happened, we can really audit and prove that things happen the right way, right? If people ask us, so there's no more uncertainty, no more, oh, did I send it to the right place? Did I send the amount of money that people wanted to receive? Did they receive the money? Did they perform KYC AML checks? So it's all done, right? And we can prove it. So that's what we want to do. So how does it actually happen when we map it to Corda? So we start by, and of course, so how many of you actually building Corda applications? So okay, so about a third. Yeah. So maybe I explain it a little bit. So Corda, unlike other DLTs, right? The Corda is very unique, so that you basically, when you send a transaction, you actually orchestrate a transaction using flows. So and that's a very unique mechanism. It allows you to really do, only touch the parties that's supposed to see the transaction, right? So everything is based on flows and states, right? So you start with a certain state, you start orchestrating, sending that state across the members that need to take a look at them, take a look at the transaction, approve it, change the state, sign the state, and then everybody was on the same page, right? That's how Corda works, and that's what we're using here. So essentially, I talked about this MyCUID wallet. What happens is that we get verifiable personal data, payment details like who is it going to, the account number for the beneficiary, and all these different things. So it goes into through the Corda application into our smart contracts, into our flow engine, which is basically then says, all right, let me take a look at these credentials, make sure they're correct, they check out, all the signatures are correct. right? And we use subflows for that. It's another very unique part of Corda that if you want to add logic to how you process transaction and move the business logic along, you can actually easily do it and involve, external mechanisms or bridge to external mechanisms. That's what we do here with Cordanity, which is open source technology we contributed, which allows everybody to easily talk to sovereign or Hyperledger Indy-based identity solutions. So once we've done the check, we generate the payment ID, right? So external applications can talk to us about what's going on there. So, and once that's done, we basically form send funds state, right? So we know we're ready to start sending the funds. Now we go to asynchronous execution, which is another great thing about Corda. So you can have, at any point in time, you have multiple things in flight, and Corda will make sure that if you stop somewhere, you can resume later as things become ready, right? So now what we need to do after we sort of started initiating the funds transfer, we need to do AML check. And for that, as I said, we use an Acuity, which is existing AML provider. They have databases and services to search for people, politically exposed persons and so on and so forth, which they do offline. And then they provide a proof, again, via subflow to us. So they perform the check. Check is OK. So we can transition to AML check state. That means that we have the proof at this point that we've done our job for AML. Right. So great. So now we set everything up, and we have records about that. So now we go into consent. So as I mentioned, one of the goals for us is to make sure that the transfer is transparent, not only for the people who initiate the transfer, but also for people who receive the funds, right? And to allow for that, we want to ask for their consent. We want to verify who they are and make sure they agree they want to receive this money, right? As well, all these different things in one step. So what happens here is essentially a kind of a mirror process happens. So the credit union 2 is connected to the same, of course, Corda network. They get alert that AML check state is in progress, and what it will do, that will trigger a subflow on their side, basically talking to this identity wallet, right? An identity wallet will represent it as an agent, right? So that means that when people want to provide details about themselves, they don't have to be online, right? So obviously mobile applications can never be always online. So that means there is a cloud-based agent who represents them, and our application is authorized to talk to that agent. So it will provide a request. And in this case, of course, the person needs to confirm it. So we'll wait till they connected, get the push notification. They will review what we're asking them to do and provide, again, cryptographically signed consent from the identity wallet. So we will verify that, just make sure it's coming with the right signatures and everything else, again, through the subflow talking to external system. Again, talk to the network level Oracle to perform AML check, get the proof from them. And of course, we have to, at this point in time, share personal details. But again, it happens in a peer-to-peer manner. So only people who need to know are notified of that. And we have verification that nobody who doesn't need to know has been exposed to that information, right? So at this point in time, we basically have consent requested state as completed. And then we basically, after all these things done, we initiate a flow just to create, issue obligation and finalize our consent state, right? So at this time we have a few states. We've done AML check. We've done other things, right? So then we basically go to finalization of payments. So what happens here? We basically, take results of our latest state. Initiate the obligation state through a Corda settler, which talks to whatever payment rail we have selected, creates the obligation through the settler. Then once the money is received, right, we finalize the obligation state of the settler, and finally we satisfy the obligation state for the transfer on the application side, right? So just to summarize it all, right? So we basically go through several different states. From sends fuzz requests to AML check results, creating all kinds of details for that transaction, then moving into consent, looking at AML checks and all that interesting things, creating obligation for payment, initiating the payment, tracking it through, finalizing it, and finalizing all the records, right? And you know, like I said here, there's a business process that we go through. We verify all the information, we record it, so we can prove it both to the members, you know, regulators, and credit unions themselves that everything went exactly as planned, right? So, and again, in a very confidential manner. Only these two parties know about this, nobody else, right? Which is not possible to do with other solutions out there, right? So, obviously, SSI gives us all kinds of interesting things we can do in the future. You know, one thing is we would like to start receiving the AML credentials beforehand, so you don't have to wait for them to complete. You can actually be pre-authorized in a peer-to-peer manner. You have a credential, you have been verified, so you can share it with the process, so we don't have to do it during the transaction. That's one of the things that we will be adding. And of course, the other things is that, you know, when we share information, who pays whom, and negate consent, of course, it can happen also on a peer-to-peer manner just between these two people or companies, and they will just provide the information that they have, the agreement, you know, into the system, simplifying the process and, you know, improving confidentiality. So just to summarize, you know, we're really using, I believe, a unique but emergent, you know, stack that other people are also using. I've heard from other people at this conference already that they're converging on the same idea. Actually, W3C recently just approved a formal group around DIDs, which is the basis for this technology, which is very, very good. And, you know, we address the needs of a very unique community with this unique set of technologies that, you know, really solves the UX problem for people, right? Make it, you know, very simple, but at the same time compliant, privacy preserving. It helps us to get rid of paper for good. And, you know, leverages existing and emerging FinServ infrastructure, which is very important, right? A lot of people say, well, we can do blockchain, we just get the banks out of the business. I don't believe so. You kind of need to give, you know, embrace people and help them move into the new world, right? So that's what we do. That's fairly exciting. That's what I had to say today. If you have any questions, we actually have our technical people here. We have a booth. We can talk and explain what's going on. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Yes, very good. Thank you. Thanks, Fazli. We've got a couple questions here on the app, just very quickly. We've only got 3 minutes. First one, is there any specific reason why Hyperledger Indy protocol was used? Can't this be done completely with Corda?
Well, Corda, no, it cannot be done with Corda today. In the future, maybe, because, you know, you've seen from other companies that are trying to create DID methods. You know, Indy is the only technology today that gives you complete capability to do credentials exchange in an anonymous way, right, as a separate engine technology, right? So the only mature thing today to use. As things become more mature with other technologies, we can onboard them as well because we're using DID comms, the emerging set of standards, right, to support it.
Great, thank you. Now the next one's multi-pronged. Number one, who controls the exchange rates on your platform?
That's the logic that is connected to how we use Settler. So it's part of the logic to tap into Settler, select whatever payment trail is connected to Settler for the credit unions. We will basically analyze it and do the best execution, right? So that's the logic we're building. It's not yet complete, but that's a possibility for us to implement it that way.
And off the back of that, do you plan to build virtual accounts within the network for when a credit union may want to hold a position rather than exchange?
Tokenization, right? Sure. That's actually one of the things we're thinking of. You know, right now you notice we're not talking about any tokens on doing payments and netting on the network itself. This is a possibility. If credit unions wants to do it, we can easily support it. That's the beauty of the platform.
That's all that's on the app. Is there anything in the audience, very quickly, one more question? If not, you've got 2 more minutes back in your day. So another round of applause. Thanks to Vasily.
Thank you.
Very good presentation. Thank you.